Witness Adam Schiff's whole political life completely vanish in exactly 14 seconds of painfully quiet live TV broadcasting, flawlessly taken apart by a 73-year-old country lawyer out of Louisiana packing absolutely nothing except four manila folders and Schiff's very own autographed papers. Adam Schiff had not uttered a single word for 14 seconds. The congressional lapel pin resting on his $3,000 suit coat had tilted 4 degrees away from the center. His right hand wasn't bothering to fix it anymore. His right hand was clutching it the exact same way a drowning guy clutches a floating chunk of wood. It ain't because the wood is going to rescue him, but simply because dropping it feels a whole lot worse. Clear across the aisle, a rural attorney hailing from Madisonville, Louisiana, sitting at 73 years of age, stared right at him over a pair of reading spectacles. "Senator, I am fixing to ask you one final time, and after that I am going to quit asking since I figure the 4 million folks tuning into this proceeding have already pieced together the truth." He stated that the file sitting directly in front of John Neely Kennedy was flipped wide open to the 7th page. The 7th page happened to be a Fannie Mae home refinancing sworn paper marked down on the 19th of April, 2011. Adam Schiff's own John Hancock was sitting right there at the absolute bottom. Schiff kept his mouth completely shut. Smash that thumbs up button and hit subscribe, because what you are fixing to hear is the morning a country attorney toting 4 manila files strolled right into a Senate proceeding room, listened to Adam Schiff run him down for 4 straight minutes, and then spent the following 52 minutes systematically wrecking every single tale that man spun to the American folks over the prior 8 years on live broadcast with the pure proof. Let us rewind 53 minutes back to the exact second Adam Schiff committed the absolute worst blunder any prosecuting attorney could ever make. He genuinely figured he was the one doing the prosecuting. He didn't think he was just running some jumped-up bayou accounting operation. Adam Schiff was 3 minutes deep into his introductory speech. The congressional lapel pin pinned on his dark blue outfit sat perfectly dead center. The fancy labeled fizzy water rested there completely unopened. He had looked over the roster of folks testifying during his plane ride out of LAX the prior evening. There wasn't a single name on there that gave him the nervous sweats. "I would nicely remind my colleague that the business of this panel ain't bait shop business. We are dealing with issues holding serious constitutional weight. So I would politely ask the gentleman hailing from Louisiana to keep in mind that this right here is the United States Senate," Schiff stated. The blue side of the panel gave a little smirk. An aide sitting right there in the second row offered a tiny thumbs-up sign. What Schiff completely missed knowing was that the rural attorney out of Madisonville spent the prior evening up in a third-floor workspace of the Russell Senate building alongside 2 aides pulled from the Senate banking panel, 3 typed-out files grabbed from the Federal Housing Finance Agency, and 1 single manila folder. They wrapped up putting that folder together at exactly 17 minutes past 11 at night. He hauled it back to his place, looked it over, made a single telephone call lasting exactly 6 minutes, and hit the sack. That exact folder was sitting right there on the lower desk directly in front of him now. Schiff totally wasn't done talking yet. "And while I sure admire the gentleman's law diploma from a mighty fine state college, I would nicely remind him that not everybody around here picked up constitutional law out of some textbook printed up before the Voting Rights Act." Schiff leaned on back. The media director standing off in the wings gave a single slow nod, exactly the way a movie maker nods when they wrap up a good scene. Clear across the aisle, Senator John Neely Kennedy didn't throw a single word back. He picked his spectacles right up. He took them clean off his face. He pulled a little white fabric rag straight out of his coat pocket. He rubbed down the right glass, and right after that, he hit the left one. He folded that rag up into a much tinier square, tucked it right back inside his pocket, and slid those spectacles back onto his face. He grabbed his bottle of water, just regular everyday hearing room plastic without no fancy label. He popped the top off, took a little swallow, screwed the top back down, and placed the bottle exactly 2 inches to the left of its original spot. He picked up that manila file. He flipped it wide open to the 4th page. He pinned it down flat using his left hand. He completely held back from saying a single word just yet. A solid 12 seconds ticked right on by. Kennedy pulled the mic a bit closer to his own mouth. Senator Schiff, I kindly thank you. I sure value the warm reception. That southern twang was laying on real thick. It absolutely wasn't no fake show-off kind of thick. It was straight-up Madisonville thick. You know where I hail from? My pop used to run a tiny little bait shack right down by the Chifuncte River. Peddled earthworms for the most part. He used to tell me a little something when I was coming up. He would say, boy, when a fella burns the first 3 minutes of a chat telling you exactly how stupid you are, he is fixing to do something mighty stupid his own self. The accent tipped its cap a little bit. I always figured that was some pretty solid wisdom. The blue side of the panel smirked again, but a whole lot slower this go-around. A lawmaker sitting exactly 3 spots away from Schiff let out a single chuckle and quickly stopped his own self. Kennedy kept his eyes locked right down on that folder. Senator, I would kindly like to toss a couple questions your way regarding a piece of real estate parked out in Potomac, Maryland. Every single smile dropped right off. Schiff's right hand twitched for the very first time that morning, drifting right toward his lapel pin. The 4th page happened to be a copied paper, black and white, angled just a bit from how the original paper got slapped onto the copy machine. Right near the top, printed in that standard plain lettering Fannie Mae has been relying on since the Reagan days, sat the words, Uniform Residential Loan Application Refinance. Kennedy raised it high so the automated C-SPAN lens could lock onto it. The lens locked right on. The guy running things inside the C-SPAN van parked out by the Hart Building muttered the word Zoom right into his earpiece, and the John Hancock sitting at the base of the 4th page covered up 12 million American TV screens right at that exact split second. The sign name spelled out Adam B. Schiff. That right there is your signature, ain't it, Senator? The smooth finish floating in Schiff's tone hung in there just fine. By the 18-minute mark, it would be totally gone, but right here at minute 12, it was standing its ground. Senator Kennedy, this piece of paper is being taken totally out of context. That FHFA handover is a piece of a politically driven. I didn't ask you nothing about the FHFA handover, Senator. The twang stayed real soft, basically just neighbor-like. Just the exact same way you would ask a buddy if he needs a hand hauling his grocery bags. I asked you regarding your signed name. Is that your signature or ain't it? Schiff shot a glance over to his media director standing in the wings. The media director, a gal going by the name Sarah Lynn, whose online resume pegged her as a high-up VP of public relations at a big city agency spanning 3 different towns, was already typing on her cell. She was shooting off a text message. She absolutely wasn't looking back at her boss. That right there was the initial red flag. Senator, the paper speaks for its own self, Schiff shot back. Inside a court of law, folks call that digging around for an objection. Inside a Senate proceeding packing 4 million sets of eyes glued right to it, folks call it something altogether different. A news guy sitting in the 2nd row, writing for a left-leaning publication that backed Schiff up for 6 years straight, jotted down one lone sentence inside his notepad. That sentence read, he didn't deny the signature. Kennedy completely backed off from pushing it. He didn't have no real need to. Yes, sir, it sure does. The paper dropped right back down. The southern drawl flipped over a brand new playing card. And what it states is that on the 19th day of April 2011, you swore under threat of federal punishment that a spot out in Maryland served as your main place of living. He pulled out a second duplicated paper. This specific one sported the Los Angeles County stamp right up at the top. It featured the exact same kind of standard plain lettering. It used the exact same kind of forceful, heavy-duty wording. This thing right here is a Los Angeles County taxman's homeowner exception paper. Same exact year, 2011. Property is a condo sitting out in Burbank, California. This paper demands the filer to swear that the named property acts as his main place of living over in the state of California. You put your name on this one as well, Senator. A momentary pause. The 28th day of April 2011. A second momentary pause. 9 days right after the Maryland one. The media folks area went completely dead quiet. A couple of the news guys sitting in the second row were busy scribbling down the identical digit. That digit happened to be 9. Over in the wings, Sarah Lynn gave up on texting. She was just holding the cell down by her hip right now, the glass facing downward. The exact way folks hold their cells when it hits them that whatever they were fixing to type just ain't the most pressing issue in the building anymore. Down in Madisonville, Senator, when a guy tells a couple different banks the exact same story on 2 separate days, we just call that being well-mannered. The drawl picked up its pace just a fraction. Feeding 2 banks 2 different stories inside the exact same month? Now that right there is a whole different ballgame. A third momentary pause. Folks call it Title 18 U.S. Code Section 1014, fibbing to a banking outfit, fetching up to 30 years of federal time. A tiny racket drifted up from the media area. It wasn't quite a chuckle, and it absolutely wasn't quite a gasp. Just something stuck in the middle. The kind of noise a news guy lets out when they figure out the headline of their own story just flipped upside down right to their face. Kennedy didn't pause to soak it in. He never really got a kick out of stuff while the cameras rolled. He pulled out 3 more copied papers, popping them out one right behind the other. Just the exact way a fella sitting at the dining table deals out a hand of cards. I am holding 5 of these things, Senator. 2009, 2011, 2012, 2013, plus the very first 2003 buy. Same exact property, same exact sworn claim, same exact signature. 5 separate Fannie Mae mortgages. The file flipped totally shut. Senator, Fannie Mae's very own money crime unit, and these sure ain't my personal words, they are theirs, printed right on official letter paper marked May 2025, threw around the phrase an ongoing habit of potential living status deception. That right there is the federal home loan backer of the United States, Senator. They have been looking mighty close at you. The head of the FHFA, Mr. William P. Yeah, a guy put there by Trump, but also the very man whose honest-to-God job is busting mortgage hustles, handed a criminal handoff straight over to the Attorney General. Listed out 4 different federal laws: wire hustling, mail hustling, banking hustles, and telling tall tales to a money-lending outfit. That right there is the federal rulebook, Senator. It absolutely ain't no newspaper opinion piece. Right there is the exact second Adam Schiff started crunching the numbers. He crunched them before riding the jet from LAX over to Reagan National the prior evening, somewhere way up above Nebraska. He crunched them all over again that same morning sitting in the rear of the Lincoln Town car the campaign guys dispatched. He crunched them one more time sitting inside the green room right before stepping out into the proceeding. Every single time, the arithmetic ended up exactly identical. The legal time limit on Section 14 capped out at 10 years. The absolute last tall tale marked down on a Fannie Mae paper hit back in 2013. A decade past 2013 meant 2023, and everybody was already past 2023, meaning the legal danger on the tall tale law was totally blocked by the clock. He constructed his whole entire shield right around those numbers. What he completely missed when running those numbers was that the criminal handoff didn't actually need to land a guilty verdict to totally wreck him. It just needed to get read out loud on live TV by a rural attorney carrying a manila file and holding an audience of 4 million watchers. The arithmetic parked inside his brain at the 15-minute mark of the proceeding felt a whole lot less soothing than it did flying high over Nebraska. And the whole entire time you were promising Fannie Mae that Maryland acted as your main home, scoring a cheaper borrowing rate on 5 distinct reloans cause main home loans run cheaper than second home loans. You were busy claiming a California homeowner's tax break on your Burbank spot, too. The southern twang raised its gaze straight up for the very first instance. It locked onto Schiff's stare clear across the floor. Senator, you got any real idea exactly how much cash that California break was good for? Roughly $7,000 a year shaved off your 1% property dues spanning roughly a decade. The arithmetic floated inside the proceeding room exactly like a party balloon nobody wanted to stick a pin into. That rounds out to $70,000, Senator, of California taxpayer money sliding right into your own wallet while you fed the Maryland bankers the exact reverse story. Over in the wings, Sarah Lynn's cell, the exact one she held down by her hip with the glass facing the floor, slipped right out of her grip and smacked the hard marble ground of the heart-building corridor with a tiny dead noise. A couple camera guys completely caught the sound. One of them just kept the tape rolling right along. The other guy glanced straight over at her. She didn't bother scooping the cell back up at all. That right there was the second red flag. Now, Senator, I have been practicing law just about as long as you have been practicing law, and I would like to play things strictly fair regarding a certain detail. The drawl took on a totally fresh tone right now. Chatty, practically apologetic, looking kinda like a rural doc laying out a health check to a sick fella who was most likely gonna pull through, but most likely wouldn't pull through exactly the way he prayed he would pull through. Folks run into spots where a Congress member honestly lives in a couple different houses the whole year round. We all gotta spend time up in Washington, and we all gotta spend time back home in our own state. The Federal Home Loan Rulebook completely gets that reality. They got a little something known right well as an occupancy tag. You pick out exactly which one acts as the main spot and which one acts as the backup, and you pay your dues based on those choices. The main one snags a cheaper borrowing rate, the backup spot snags a pricier one. That is strictly just the arrangement. The entire money lending setup leans completely on folks being honest on that single piece of paper. A breather. You totally didn't pick just one of them, Senator. The southern accent went hushed enough that the C-SPAN sound guy bumped the volume knob up 2 whole clicks. You picked out both of them for an entire decade spanning 5 distinct Fannie Mae loans, while at the exact same moment swearing to the state of California under threat of lying under oath on a totally different paper that California stood as your singular one. A tiny grin flashed, real quick. Not exactly mean, but absolutely not exactly sweet either. The federal home loan setup, Senator, just ain't got the space for a fella who insists on carrying 2 main spots. It is exactly like hitting up the IRS and asking for 2 batches of dependents covering the exact same child. The IRS looks pretty sour on that kind of thing, Senator. And Fannie Mae feels the exact same way, too. The media section totally didn't chuckle at all. They figured out by minute 15 that Kennedy's little punchlines weren't strictly just punchlines. They functioned exactly like heavy-duty tow trucks. They hooked right onto the meat of the point and yanked it straight ahead. And the cash it saves, Senator, the money perk of getting tagged as the main spot rather than the backup spot according to the trade experts who peeked at your exact borrowing numbers, added up to somewhere between 40 grand and 60 grand worth of interest cuts across the lifespan of those loans, on top of the 70 grand worth of California tax breaks. So we are strictly lowballing it right here. Somewhere north of 100 grand total perk, sliding right into the pocket of a currently serving Congress member spanning a decade from a couple of different state setups, both of which got a strict legal right to get the honest truth. Schiff's tone bounced right back. The smooth finish felt a whole lot weaker. He totally wasn't relying on his pre-written cheat sheets no more. He was grabbing out for an excuse the exact same way a guy grabs out for a handrail walking down a pitch-black corridor. Senator Kennedy, my California and Maryland homes got written down as main living spots for borrowing reasons solely because I live in both of them the whole year round. And just to split them apart from a standard vacation getaway, Senator, with all due respect, a lone finger popped up. That right there ain't a real answer. That right there is a totally spun PR statement. The blue side of the panel completely forgot to smile this go-around. The lawmaker sitting 3 spots away from Schiff, the exact guy who let out a chuckle back at minute 4 and quickly stopped his own self, was currently getting real familiar with the ceiling squares. He managed to locate the square sitting right on top of his head over the last 45 seconds and was busy studying the factory stamp printed right on it. The Federal Home Loan Rulebook don't claim a main living spot is just wherever you happen to catch your sleep that particular month. It states main, as in singular exactly one. The entire purpose behind the term main is that you only get to have a single one. You are an attorney your own self, Senator. Heck, you are a Harvard attorney. You definitely know exactly what Maine implies. The southern accent stayed real steady. In plain English, Maine means just one. One, uno. A fella gets to have a main one and a backup one. You sure can't have a main one paired up with a second main one. That is exactly like claiming you got a wife over here and another wife right over there. We actually got a term for that down in Louisiana as well, Senator, but I ain't fixing to use it on the television. The media section let out a single quick laugh. Right after somebody, a showrunner posted up in the rear, working for a channel that was supposed to take Schiff's side, blurted out, "Oh my goodness," loud enough to hear. The MSNBC reporter holding down the front row didn't bother swiveling around to check him out. Her expression froze up a solid 30 seconds beforehand. So you either pulled off a mortgage hustle, which packs a 30-year federal punch, or you are claiming to me on live TV that a Harvard attorney who managed the tossing-out trial of a United States president can't wrap his head around the word Maine. The twang clasped its hands right together. So what is the truth, Senator? Schiff kept his mouth completely shut. He didn't shoot a glance at his media director. He didn't shoot a glance at the lawmakers sitting 3 spots away. He didn't shoot a glance at the media section. He stared straight down at the manila file sitting on the lower desk. That file sat completely shut now. It served as the single solitary item inside the room that wasn't staring right back into his eyes at that very second. Smash that thumbs up button this very second, because what just went down was a rural Louisiana attorney absolutely pinning a serving U.S. senator to the federal home loan rulebook right on live TV. Drop a remark saying "Bayou bookkeeper" down below if you have ever witnessed a possum snap right back. Hit subscribe because this upcoming bombshell ain't got a single thing to do with real estate. It deals with a telephone chat involving a United States president. That manila file shoved itself over to the edge of the desk. A bright red file popped up to take its spot. But, Senator, I didn't travel all the way up here from Louisiana just to chat about a property in Maryland. I traveled up here to chat about a thing you swore you witnessed with your very own eyeballs, and then swore you didn't, and then swore you actually did, and then swore you had no way of knowing. A tiny southern grin flashed. I am holding 3 more of these files, Senator. That red file gave off a faint leather scent the second it flipped open. The tag taped inside the cover was written out in Kennedy's personal handwriting. 3 letters stacked with 6 numbers, HPSCI 92619. Out in the media area, a trio of reporters jotted down the calendar date. Senator, back on the 26th day of September 2019, you stood as the top dog of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. You kicked off an open-door hearing. They had a written record of it all. They had the TV cameras rolling too. You stated, and I am repeating your exact words here, quote, "I got the telephone call right here." After that, you read out what you branded as the telephone call. The twang locked back onto Schiff's gaze. You recall exactly what you claimed the president stated? A couple of extra prep beats popped right up in Schiff's tone. Anybody who caught him working the panel over the last 8 years would have caught them loud and clear. They were the exact beats that showed up whenever Schiff recognized the inquiry was inbound, recognized the truth looked ugly, and was busy picking out one of 3 practiced replies rattling in his brain. Senator Kennedy, my introductory speech from that afternoon was labeled right then and there as a spoof, which at the time, Senator, the drawl squeezed down just a fraction, just tight enough to make the media section catch on. That MSNBC reporter up in the front row, the very one whose expression froze up 30 seconds deep into the mortgage bombshell, wrote down a single term inside her notepad. That term read, "Uh-oh." After you got busted, Kennedy stated. A tiny patch of red showed up on Schiff's neck, sitting right on top of his shirt collar. The automated C-SPAN lens, tweaked to follow skin heat shifts for trophy show broadcasts rather than Senate proceedings, picked it up regardless. The guy running things inside the parked C-SPAN van mumbled the word "closer" right into his earpiece, and 12 million American TV screens watched one single bead of sweat group up, hang tight, and break free down the side of Schiff's neck. It slid roughly 1.5 inches before the shirt collar soaked it right up. It got labeled as exactly that inside the speech itself, Senator. I was hammering home a thought regarding the president's aim, not reading it back word for word, Schiff pushed back. A single sheet pulled up off the lower desk. I am fixing to read out exactly what you stated, Senator. You stated, quote, I got a little favor I need from you, though. I got a favor I need you to handle for me. A breather. That right there was meant to be Donald Trump speaking, wasn't it, Senator, the theatrical trick? And after that, you stated, I am only fixing to say this 7 times, so you had best listen real close. A second breather. That right there was the president as well, if we are believing you, wasn't it, Senator, the root of the matter? And right after that, I need you to cook up some mud on my election rival, end quote. The twang went mighty hushed right about now. The C-SPAN sound guy bumped the volume knob up yet another click. He bumped it up 3 total times inside of 20 minutes, which meant 3 times more than he ever bumped it up during any Senate legal proceeding across his 1-year job history. You read that thing right into the official government log, Senator, broadcast on national TV, sitting as the top dog of the House Intelligence Committee holding top-secret clearance. A tiny noise drifted up from the media area, exactly the same as before. Not exactly a chuckle, not exactly a gasp. That Atlantic reporter sitting in the 3rd row started writing straight into his lap. He gave up on acting like he was writing inside his open notepad. Now here is the chunk of this whole tale that always gave me a kick, Senator. The accent tipped its cap once more. You recall when the genuine written record of the genuine telephone chat got opened up by the White House? Dead quiet inside the room. The 25th day of September 2019. Exactly 1 day prior to you reading your own spin right into the log. A pair of beats. So you held the genuine one, Senator. It sat right there on your desk and you read a totally different one out loud, completely on purpose. That right there was the exact second the lawmaker sitting 3 spots away from Schiff, the guy busy studying the ceiling squares earlier, threw in the towel and stared straight down at his cell. He wasn't actually messing with his cell. He kept his eyes locked on the blank glass of his cell, which locked itself up because it sure would have looked mighty wrong to go swiping while a coworker got taken apart live on TV. Yet the blank glass of that locked cell served as the absolute most fascinating item in the room that wasn't sitting down on the lower desk at that exact second. On the 21st day of June 2023, the drawl kept on rolling. The United States House of Representatives slapped you with an official scolding by a count of 213 to 209. The document stated, quote, Representative Schiff intentionally misled his panel, Congress, and the American folks. That right there ain't my personal view, Senator. That right there is the United States House of Representatives down on the official log. Nay? A tiny southern grin. You happen to be the 25th lawmaker in the whole history of America to get a scolding like that. Number 25, Senator, out of how many tens of thousands? You are sitting in some mighty rare company over there. That right there was the second Adam Schiff got to his feet. He shoved his seat backward a couple inches. He planted both of his hands right on the desktop. That Harvard law alum, the exact guy who finished up cum laude back in 1985, who shadowed a federal judge, who worked as an assistant U.S. attorney out in Los Angeles, who personally bagged a guilty verdict on an FBI agent pulling spy work. He finally snapped awake. The California lawmaker snapped awake, the top tossing out boss who once threw a press gig right on the United States Senate floor and branded the afternoon a pivot point in American history. He snapped awake too, his tone shot straight up. Senator Kennedy, that scolding was just a partisan stunt. His finger poked the desktop one good time. That fancy fizzy water bottle shook a little bit. It got pushed through by Donald Trump's buddies over in the House. It don't hold any legal heft. It didn't force any punishment. 20 Republicans initially voted to shelf the measure before Congresswoman Luna yanked out the $16 million penalty just to gather up her votes. That right there is no judgment, Senator. That right there is a stage play. The left-leaning media section, which stayed tight-lipped for 19 solid minutes, clapped a single time, then a second time. Soon enough, a showrunner stuck in the back, whose outfit paid out cash for the right to air a Schiff-loving nightly program for 6 years straight, got to his feet and clapped holding both hands above his skull. Somebody shouted out "yes" loud enough to hear. A younger gal sporting a Schiff campaign hat, sitting in the third row holding her breath ever since that Maryland paper dropped, let out a breath and clapped too. And long as we are bringing up taking responsibility, Senator, let us talk about what Donald Trump actually pulled on that telephone call. He leaned on an overseas boss to cook up mud on an election rival. He held back military backing from a nation shooting it out with Russia. He sold out our buddies. He sold out our spy networks. He sold out the Constitution its very self. I am sticking by every single word in that introductory speech, Senator, because the meat of it rang true even if the theatrical trick acted as a spoof. His tone rode all the way up to the light fixtures. That MSNBC reporter silently mouthed in real time, "That right there is the money quote." And if you, mister, are busy utilizing a Senate proceeding to re-argue the tossing out of a fellow who caught impeachment twice, caught charges 4 times, and caught a guilty verdict on 34 felony strikes, then maybe the accounting going on in this room is sitting right exactly where it ought to be. The left-leaning group jumped up on their feet for 15 whole seconds. For 15 seconds straight, that proceeding room belonged totally to Adam Schiff. The TV showrunner sitting in 3 vans out past the Hart Building started slicing up the tape. That younger Schiff aide sitting in the back carrying a master's paper in political talk out of Georgetown who rehearsed this precise talking trick in college groups taped the whole deal up and down on herself for Instagram. A couple of the blue lawmakers up on the panel gave a nod. One of them mumbled, "Adam, Adam," right under his breath. Just the exact way a boxing trainer mumbles his fighter's name when they take the 8th round on the score sheets. Clear across the room, down on the lower desk, Kennedy never cut him off. He never waved his hands around. He never twitched. He didn't bother to even shut the red file. He just stayed put with his hands clasped on top of the manila one, exactly the way a rural attorney stays put when he has worked enough court cases to figure out that some fellas on the stand, if you give them the rope, will go right ahead and wrap up the prosecutor's argument completely on their own. The clapping hit its peak. It topped right out. It started trailing off. Once it trailed off deep enough for the C-SPAN sound guy to spin the volume knob back to its normal spot, Kennedy finally talked. That drawl completely vanished. It didn't just disappear into thin air. It got packed away real gentle, exactly the way a fella hangs his cap on a peg by the entryway, figuring he is going to grab it again in a couple of minutes. The tone spilling out of that mic right now was a tone not a single soul inside that proceeding room caught before. Schiff didn't catch it. Schiff's media director didn't catch it. The panel didn't catch it. And the Atlantic reporters stuck in the third row who trailed Kennedy for a character piece 3 years prior and decided on paper that the Louisiana twang was most definitely a put-on, didn't catch it neither. The tone stepping up to the plate right now belonged to John Neely Kennedy, holding a J.D. from the University of Virginia School of Law magna cum laude class of 1977, holding a postgraduate diploma in law and government from Magdalen College, Oxford University class of 1973, Louisiana State Treasurer spanning 2000 to 2017. That tone cut like a federal courtroom razor. The twang didn't disappear. The twang just got hung up on a peg. Senator Schiff? Inside Schiff's brain, sitting somewhere past the practice comebacks and the drilled money quotes, a tiny bit of math kicked off that he forgot to run riding the jet out of LAX, riding the Lincoln Town Car, or sitting in the green room. That math worked out like this. He got this ready. He got this ready just last evening. The Oxford tone kept on rolling. Article 1, Section 5, Clause 2 of the United States Constitution grants every single House of Congress the power to slap its own folks for rowdy conduct. The scolding of a currently serving lawmaker happens to be one of 3 official punishing tools left open to the House. Scolding, reprimand, booting them out. It absolutely ain't a stage play. It stands as constitutional punishment. The tally landed at 213 to 209. The document stays parked right on the permanent log of the United States House of Representatives. It grabs onto the term intentionally misled. A breather, just one beat. That right there ain't no theatrical trick, Senator. That right there is a solid ruling. See, right after that, the drawl crept back in nice and slow, just like a cap getting dropped back on a head. The Oxford tone slipped real quietly out the door, and Madisonville strolled right back inside. Now you are free to brand it as partisan. You are free to brand it as a stage play. You are free to brand it as whatever you damn well please. But the one thing you sure can't pull, Senator, is read a phony typed-out record of a presidential telephone chat right into the government log on national TV, catch a scolding for it handed down by the United States House, and sit right here 4 years down the road telling a rural attorney from Louisiana that the scolding don't matter. Those eyes locked right back onto Schiff's. It sure matters, Senator. It mattered back then, it matters right now, and it is going to keep mattering when the history boys grab a seat and type out exactly what sort of top dog you actually were. All that clapping was totally gone. The left-leaning group all grabbed their seats again somewhere over the past 40 seconds. Not a single one of them actually recalled doing it. That younger Schiff aide holding the Georgetown master's paper gave up on taping the whole deal. The showrunner stuck in the back pivoted to his buddy and asked him in a real quiet mumble if he bothered reading through the newly unsealed Atkinson testimony. 15 seconds. Schiff snagged a win for 15 seconds. Right after that, he dropped the following 90. Drop a comment saying, "Possum bit back," if you have ever once in your whole life watched a lawmaker from Louisiana drop a Harvard legal twang right on top of a Harvard law grad. Hit subscribe, because this upcoming bombshell deals with a telephone chat Schiff handled prior to the tossing out push to a guy he swore he didn't even know while fibbing about it right on TV. That red file flipped shut. It gave off the exact same tiny, firm smack against the timber as the manila one did earlier. A couple files piled up, a couple more left on deck. A dark blue file popped up right on the desk. That dark blue file looked a whole lot thicker than the first two. Anybody sitting in the media section who burned more than a single year keeping tabs on Schiff figured out exactly what was packed inside just by looking at how fat it was. That Atlantic reporter stuck in the third row, who backed up the tossing out push early on back in 2019, dropped his ink pen right down on his notepad without making a sound. He didn't pick it back up for the following 11 minutes. "Senator, you recall a Mr. Michael Atkinson?" Schiff grabbed his seat again during that little Oxford tone break. His right hand found its way back to his lapel pin exactly the way a fella's hand finds its way back to a handrail inside a corridor he ain't quite sure about no more. That pin still sat right in the middle of his lapel, but it drifted 2 degrees away from dead center, exactly like the C-SPAN tape quietly caught over the last 4 minutes. Senator Kennedy, the Inspector General, acted as an Obama pick. "Yes, sir, I sure recall. I just got to make certain the good folks tuning in from their couches recall it too, because this whole tale plays a lot sweeter when you realize exactly whose guy Mr. Atkinson really was." The twang flipped the file wide open. Mr. Atkinson grabbed a whistleblower grievance on the 12th day of August 2019. That grievance dealt with a telephone chat happening between President Trump and the top guy over in Ukraine. That chat went down on the 25th of July. The grievance got handed in 18 days down the line. The guy complaining was a CIA numbers cruncher whose handle has been plastered all across the open records for 5 straight years by now. Those eyes locked right back onto Schiff. "Senator, prior to that whistleblower handing his grievance over to Mr. Atkinson, prior to him filling out the official paperwork and signing his name under threat of lying under oath, did he or did he not link up with folks on your crew?" "Senator Kennedy, the whistleblower's name stays shielded by federal rule, and I didn't ask you for his name, Senator." The drawl stayed real patient, exactly the way a doc stays patient with a fellow who won't quit trying to walk right out of the checkup room. "I asked you if he chatted with your crew prior to handing in the grievance." "Son." Schiff shot a glance over to his media director. The media director, Sarah Lynn of the drop cell, stared right back down at her cell again. That cell faced glass up this go-around. She was busy swiping through it. She absolutely wasn't swiping for a good time. She was swiping around for a thing that just wasn't showing up. Senator Kennedy, the folks on my committee grabbed a standard poke from a guy holding worries about a possible issue meant for the Inspector General. We stuck to all the right steps. Standard, Senator. A breather. Just enough of one. Was it standard that a couple weeks prior to that grievance getting handed in, actually the very next day right after the Trump-Zelensky telephone chat, your committee brought on a fella going by the name of Sean Misko? The room, which already sat quiet, dropped into a kind of quiet that felt a whole lot heavier than quiet. Over in the wings, Sarah Lynn gave up swiping. She dropped the cell right down on the banister. She didn't bother picking it back up for the rest of the proceeding. Mr. Misko, going by open logs covered by the Washington Examiner, served as an old National Security Council helper. He put in work at the NSC back during the Obama days. He put in work right over there side by side with the very same fellow who later handed in the whistleblower grievance. They acted as co-workers. Some folks who put in work alongside them claimed they ran mighty tight. One old White House boss even tossed around the term bro-like, a tiny southern grin. Not mean, not sweet, just purely worn out. You brought Mr. Misko on board on the 26th day of July 2019. That Trump-Zelensky telephone chat went down on the 25th of July. That right there is a single-day window, Senator. Just one day. And the fella you brought on board on the second day just so happened to be the old housemate of the fella who handed in the grievance that set off the tossing out of the President of the United States. The twang locked right onto Schiff's gaze one final time. That right there is one hell of a lucky break, ain't it, Senator? Senator Kennedy, Mr. Misko stands as a skilled national security expert packing deep. He also happens to be the fella who, going by a couple of old White House bosses talking straight for the record over to Real Clear Investigations, got caught talking in the West Wing back in February 2017, just weeks after President Trump grabbed the seat, chatting about exactly how to knock the president out of commission. 2 weeks deep. That tale has been sitting out there on the open logs for years now, Senator. A twangy breather. You ever happen to read it? A much tighter breather. That piece of news ain't backed up by facts. Real Clear Investigations happens to be the exact same crew that cracked the Hunter Biden laptop check, Senator. They ain't exactly the National Enquirer. A couple White House bosses talking straight for the record regarding a fellow you brought on board exactly one day after the telephone chat he later called out. The MSNBC reporter up in the front row completely gave up on keeping her expression straight. She was showing a mighty nasty grimace now. 3 rows straight back from her, a showrunner putting together a podcast that burned 4 straight years branding Schiff as the soul of the Constitution, whispered to his buddy that he would have to ring up the main host later that afternoon. Now, here's the chunk that always got me scratching my own skull, Senator. The drawl grabbed onto a 4th copied paper. Back on the 17th day of September 2019, you hopped right onto national TV. You hopped right onto MSNBC. The TV host asked you straight up if your committee held any ties with the whistleblower. You stated, and we got this on tape, any fella can yank it right up, quote, "We ain't talked straight to the whistleblower, though we sure would like to." A breather. That right there was a Tuesday, a longer breather. A couple weeks down the line, on the 2nd of October, the New York Times broke the news. Not Fox News, Senator. The New York Times broke the news that the whistleblower actually did keep ties with your crew prior to him handing in the grievance. Your squad then pushed out a message owning up to those ties. So you either didn't have a clue what your very own crew was up to, Senator, or you hopped onto national TV and sold a lie to the American folks. Tiny southern shrug, almost feeling sorry about it. Take your pick. Schiff's hand, the exact one resting on the lapel pin, looked noticeably gripped tighter now. That pin drifted from 2 degrees off dead center straight to 4. You couldn't really catch it from the panel. You could catch it loud and clear on the C-SPAN feed. The guy running things in the C-SPAN van parked out by the Hart Building mumbled the word pin right into his earpiece, and the lens flipped real quick to a tight shot of nothing but the pin. The pin grabbed the room light in a way it totally missed grabbing the light back at minute 4. Senator Kennedy, the ties going on between my crew and the guy complaining were strictly by the book and totally matched up with us. Mr. Atkinson sat down and talked straight to your committee back on the 4th of October 2019, Senator. The twang dropped a little lower now. Under oath. He stated the whistleblower completely left off the official grievance paperwork that he already linked up with folks on your crew. That paperwork demands you spell out, quote, other moves you pulled regarding your reveal, all under threat of lying under oath. Mr. Atkinson stated, and I am reading right off your very own committee's typed record, if we caught wind of the earlier ties, it would have stood as an extra piece for our checkup. Those eyes locked onto Schiff again. That right there ain't Devin Nunes running his mouth, Senator. That right there ain't Donald Trump neither. That right there is an Obama pic telling your committee that a piece of the puzzle just didn't tally up. A twangy breather. And here's the chunk I just can't quit circling back to, Senator. The tone sank down another half notch. The C-SPAN sound guy bumped the volume knob up for the 4th straight time that morning. The whistleblower grievance that set off the tossing out of a sitting president of the United States, the paperwork that kicked off a complete Senate trial, chewed up 3 solid months of media chatter and ate up every bit of breathing room in American politics during the back half of 2019. That grievance got built totally on hearsay. Mr. Atkinson backed it up while under oath. The whistleblower never sat in on that telephone chat. He never caught a single word of the chat. He just read a summary. He chattered up folks who happened to read a summary. He chattered up your crew after that, and then he handed in a grievance without spelling out that he chattered up your crew. A breather. 16 out of the 18 tossing out witnesses your committee brought in, Senator, tossed out hearsay stories. 16 out of 18. The couple of them that weren't spitting hearsay completely failed to nail down the main charge. The genuine typed record of the genuine telephone chat, once it got opened up, didn't actually say what the whistleblower swore it said. The President of the United States opened it right up all on his own. Any fella out there could read it for his own self. And any fella who bothered to read it found out that the words you read out loud on September 26 never showed up in the genuine chat. Inside Schiff's brain, sitting somewhere past the quick-spinning mental deck of practice comebacks, not a single one of which lined up with the inquiry getting tossed his way, a brand new piece of math kicked off. The initial math up above Nebraska dealt with legal time limits. This fresh one felt a whole lot easier. He is holding all of it. Every single thing I have ever stated, he is holding all of it. His jaw dropped open, snapped shut, dropped open again. Senator, the Atkinson talk got totally taken out of context by exactly who, Senator? The drawl felt light, chatty, exactly the kind of tone a fella uses when he asks his buddy if he needs a hand hauling his grocery bags. A couple of reporters sitting in the second row scribbled down the exact same singular term inside their notepads. That term read, whom? By the New York Times, by Mr. Atkinson, by the Washington Examiner, by a couple old White House bosses, by my own self? A tiny, worn-out Southern grin. 'Cause somebody in this bunch is taking things out of context right here, and it sure ain't the Inspector General. A breather. Right after that, the twang pulled a move it totally avoided all morning long. It dropped down one whole level. The down-home flavor still hung around. The Madisonville flavor still hung around. But the nice manners, the senator with all due respect manners, completely vanished. The tone stepping up to the plate right now belonged to a fellow who burned 43 minutes treating Adam Schiff exactly like a coworker and figured out somewhere between Sean Misko's start date and that September 17th MSNBC tape that he was completely finished with all that. Senator, let me just state what I figure you and don't want me to state. I figure you sold a lie. I figure you sold a lie to a countrywide TV crowd on the 17th day of September 2019. I figure you sold a lie when you read a phony typed record straight into the government log on September 26th. I figure you sold a lie for 4 straight years to any fellow willing to stick a mic right in your face. And I figure you knew damn well you were selling a lie the entire time. Now you are free to throw a flag on how I am framing this. You are free to brand it as partisan. You are free to have your media director push out a message once this proceeding wraps up branding me as a right-wing smokescreen. But the American folks catching this on their TV sets back home, the very ones whose tax cash covered the 32 million probe that sprouted right out of your lies, they got a right to hear somebody, just a single time on live TV, say the actual word out loud. A twangy breather. You sold them a lie, Senator. For years. The proceeding room sat dead still. Sarah Lynn over in the wings slapped her hand right over her mouth. The MSNBC reporter up in the front row stared straight down at her footwear. A couple lawmakers up on the panel stopped pulling air loud enough to catch. The C-SPAN sound guy parked out in the van, pushed back in his seat and mumbled the word Jesus right into his coffee mug. Schiff kept his mouth completely shut. The media section didn't chuckle at all. They were chuckling a solid 40 minutes beforehand. That MSNBC reporter who grabbed a seat inside this exact same proceeding room 6 years prior during the Trump tossing out burned that entire proceeding scratching down notes exactly the way a holy man scratches down notes. This afternoon, she wasn't scratching down notes at all. Both hands sat parked right in her lap. Her gaze locked onto the floorboards roughly 3 feet dead ahead of her footwear. Something flipped inside the room and nobody bothered filling the press in. Or, and this right here is exactly what the Atlantic reporter stuck in the third row was starting to figure out in real time, with a feeling he would later spell out to a buddy over a couple of rounds as finding out the preacher was actually the crook. The press got filled in all right. The press got filled in for 4 straight years. A chunk of them just simply decided not to tune in. If you're catching this right now and you ain't hit subscribe yet, you're fixing to miss the second. A rural attorney hauls the steel file right into a Senate proceeding room and tells Adam Schiff to grab a seat, while 3 of the fellas whose lives he helped tear down march right up to the witness mic. Drop a comment saying 3 witnesses if you are dying to catch this part. Smash that subscribe button. Don't budge an inch. That dark blue file flipped shut. 3 files piled up on the lower desk, a single one left to go. A pitch black file popped up. That pitch black file didn't pop open straight away. For the very first time in 51 minutes, the lower desk sat dead still. Kennedy never peeled back the cover. He never dragged out a sheet. He just stared at the file. He stared right at Schiff. He shot a mighty quick glance toward the back of the proceeding room. The lenses stayed locked right on the panel the whole entire morning. They totally missed checking out the third row from the back on the left-hand side, where 3 fellas snagged a seat ever since 8:45 a.m. That Atlantic reporter stuck in the second row marched right past those 3 fellas on his way inside without even clocking them. A couple of them held onto coffee mugs earlier. One of them spent time flipping through a Wall Street Journal. Not a single one of them sported a media badge. Not a single one of them sported a witness pin. The Republican top dog hailing from Iowa got the word about them way back at 6:45 that very morning. Not a single other soul knew. Senator Kennedy, stated the drawl, rock solid now. Not down home, not Oxford, just a thing resting right in the middle. The tone of a fellow who hit the stretch of the trial where he just ain't got to put on a show no more. Back on the 20th day of March 2017, you sat as the top minority dog of the House Intelligence Committee. You handed out an introductory speech at an open-door hearing. That hearing went straight to TV. Tens of millions of American folks tuned right in. And inside your introductory speech, Senator, you read right out loud into the official government log of the United States. Several specific charges pulled from a piece of paper branded as the steel file. That pitch black file popped wide open. Tucked inside that file, resting right on top, sat a lone picture. A big 8x10 blown-up shot of a singular sheet pulled from the file. That sheet sported blacked-out spots in a few places. Those blacked-out spots looked mighty old. The file itself was even older. You recall reading those charges out loud, Senator? Senator Kennedy, the file stood as a point of open chatter right around that time, and it was... Senator, it sure was a point of chatter, but there is a mighty big gap between a point of chatter and solid proof. You laid those charges out exactly like solid proof. You stated on TV right on ABC News back in March 2017, quote, "We got more than just sketchy proof of working together." The drawl pulled out a second picture. This specific one acted as a screen grab, a frozen frame pulled from a TV sit-down. Schiff sat right in the frame, halfway through a phrase, mouth cracked open just a bit. You stated it right on CNN. You stated it right on MSNBC. You stated it over at the Aspen Institute. You stated it right on Meet the Press. You stated it for 2.5 whole years, always leaning on the exact same phrase, more than sketchy. The drawl raised its gaze straight up. "Senator, did you ever once cough up that proof?" Son, the room sank piece by piece into a kind of quiet that felt a whole lot deeper than quiet. The media section turned into a solid line of unmoving skulls. The panel turned into a solid line of unmoving skulls. The showrunners sitting inside the TV vans parked out by the Hart Building completely quit barking orders at their camera guys. The C-SPAN sound guy leaned forward right in his chair, both hands resting on his board, tuning in with his whole entire face the exact same way a fella tunes into a sin spilling anywhere inside any hearing, inside any sworn sit-down, inside any locked door brief, inside any committee paper. "Did you ever, just a single time across 2.5 years of saying it on TV, cough up the more than sketchy proof, Senator?" Senator Kennedy, the Mueller probe. The Mueller probe turned up 0 criminal teaming up, Senator. The twang dropped a little lower now. The C-SPAN volume knob already sat cranked to the absolute max. Burned up 32 million of the American taxpayers' cash. Burned up 2.5 years of news spins. And the final word stamped in ink from Special Counsel Robert Mueller, a Republican fella, an old FBI top dog picked by a Republican president, stated that the probe, quote, "failed to nail down coordination or teaming up." A twangy breather right here. Mr. Horowitz, the Department of Justice Inspector General, yet another straight shooting figure. He dropped a paper back in December 2019. He dug up 17 big-time screw-ups and left out details inside the FISA paperwork used to spy on Carter Page, the very same FISA paperwork that leaned totally on the Steele file. He swore under oath, and this right here sits on the open log, that the FBI already handed Christopher Steele his walking papers as a secret source for fibbing prior to the FISA renewals, and not a single soul bothered to tell the FISA judge. Those eyes locked right back onto Schiff. Mr. Durham, Special Counsel John Durham, dropped his wrap-up paper in May 2023, deciding the FBI totally lacked a solid ground for kicking off the Crossfire Hurricane probe. 0. The file stood in his own exact words, unproven and sketchy. The main backup source, a fellow going by the name Igor Danchenko, caught charges for feeding tall tales to federal badges. A lone printed sheet pulled right out of the file. The drawl held it straight up in the air. "Senator, this right here is your committee's Democratic cheat sheet. The 24th day of February 2018. You sat as the top Democrat. The cheat sheet states, and I am fixing to read this mighty slow cause I need every single American tuning in to catch it. Quote, FBI and DOJ bosses didn't misuse the FISA setup, didn't leave out heavy details, and didn't twist this crucial tool to snoop on the Trump campaign. 3 straight no's, Senator. You typed that up, you signed your name to it, you handed it over to the press." Those eyes stayed totally locked onto Schiff. 22 months down the line, Mr. Horowitz dropped the IG paper. 17 big-time screw-ups, heavy left-out details, set-up train wrecks. "The FBI sure did twist the setup, Senator." The Inspector General said exactly that in ink inside a 600-page paper packed with little notes. A breather. "Senator, 22 whole months. Did you ever, across those 22 months or the 4 straight years riding behind them, push out a fix, a patched-up cheat sheet, a take-back, a single tiny sentence owning up that the IG paper totally busted yours? Senator Kennedy, the troubles brought up by Mr. Horowitz got sorted out in later. That right there is a no, Senator." The printed sheet dropped right back down onto the desk. That pitch-black file flipped completely shut. Inside Schiff's brain, the third piece of math kicked off. The initial one dealt with Nebraska. The second one dealt with exactly how much dirt Kennedy held on him. The third one felt a whole lot easier. It felt a whole lot easier than the first couple smashed together. This whole thing is wrapped up. The notion didn't show up as a freak out, didn't show up as rage, just sat there as a cold, hard fact parked on the inside of his skull exactly the way a jury's call sits on the inside of a courtroom door right before the lead juror reads it out loud. He managed to hit 53 minutes deep into an open proceeding, the exact spot every single prosecutor hits once or twice across a whole run, the exact spot where the math of the trial completely stops counting and the math of staying alive turns into the only math left standing. He knew exactly what he needed to pull off now. He needed to stand his ground right there. He needed to hand out the wrap-up money quote. He needed to stroll out of there holding his chin high. He stood as a Harvard-schooled attorney. He totally knew exactly how to take a beating. What he totally didn't know, what not a single soul inside the room short of Kennedy knew, and exactly what Kennedy was fixing to hand over, was that the beating wasn't fully wrapped up just yet. "Mr. Chairman," Kennedy stated, "with the headman's okay, I would like to bring up 3 watchers to talk to the committee real quick." The Republican top dog hailing from Iowa, who clearly had a hell of a good time all morning ever since minute 6, gave a little nod. The headman gives the floor to the witnesses. Back in the third row from the rear on the left-hand side, 3 fellas got to their feet. The lenses locked right onto them. 11 distinct TV feeds, 3 broadcast vans, a couple C-SPAN automated rigs, 1 fixed-in-place MSNBC lens, and roughly 470 cell phones hoisted up inside the crowd, all swiveled around in the exact same half-second to stare right at the third row from the rear. The initial fella rocked a deep gray suit coat. He looked to be sitting right in his early 50s. His hair sat parted real neat. He carried himself exactly like a fella who hit way too many courtrooms to catch the jitters stepping into another one. He marched straight over to the witness mic exactly the way a fella marches who pulled it off before, right in front of the TV lenses, while his whole run got publicly torn down inside the very same room. The second he hit the mic, the media section clocked exactly who he was. A reporter sitting in the third row whispered out loud, "Holy, my name happens to be Carter Page," he stated. His tone felt mighty cool. His tone felt mighty cool back in 2017, too. It felt cool during those FISA renewals. It felt cool when his whole run vanished into thin air. It felt totally cool right now. "I stand as an American citizen. I put in good time serving the United States Navy. I pack a PhD pulled from the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London. Back in 2016, I turned into the bullseye for a FISA slip built totally on a paper Senator Schiff knew damn well wasn't proven. That FISA slip got re-upped 3 separate times. The Department of Justice Inspector General figured out the FISA paperwork used against me held 17 big-time screw-ups and heavy left-out details. I caught heat from probes spanning nearly 2 straight years. I never caught a single charge. I never caught an indictment. I never caught cuffs. Senator Schiff read out the meat of that file, a big chunk of it tied right to me, straight into the government log. Tens of millions of American folks caught him doing it. A tiny breather. Page stared right at Schiff. Schiff kept staring right down at the desktop. I would kindly like the Senate and the American folks to keep in mind that I am still sitting right here. He grabbed his seat again. The MSNBC reporter up in the front row started shedding tears. She wasn't shedding tears because she felt a lick of pity for Carter Page. She was shedding tears because she burned 4 straight years on TV, backing up the idea that Carter Page worked as an overseas spy. She was shedding tears because she packed her cheat sheets from those very TV hits right inside her purse resting down by her feet. The second fella got to his feet. He looked a bit older, pushing his late 50s, packing a wider frame. He marched straight over to the mic exactly the way a plowboy marches toward a thing he has been fixing to repair for a good while. "My name happens to be Devin Nunes," he stated. "I stand as an old member of the United States House of Representatives. I put in work as the top minority dog and later on as the top boss of the House Intelligence Committee. The left-leaning media section, which jumped on its feet for 15 solid seconds back at minute 32, sat mighty quiet right about now. Back in February 2018, I pushed out a cheat sheet. The cheat sheet stated the FISA setup got totally misused. The cheat sheet stated clearing details got totally left out. The cheat sheet stated the file hadn't been backed up by fax. Senator Schiff went on the open record stating my cheat sheet stood, quote, unbacked by the facts and the probe log. 22 months down the line, the Department of Justice Inspector General backed up every single heavy claim inside my cheat sheet. A breather. Nunes totally skipped looking at Schiff. He stared straight out at the media section instead. Senator Schiff hasn't bothered to offer up an I am sorry even to this very day. He grabbed his seat again. The third fella got to his feet. He looked older still, pushing his mid-30s back when all the mess the hearing dealt with originally kicked off, but the passing years dealt him a mighty tough hand. He toted a tiny, leather-wrapped notepad. He rested it right on the witness desktop prior to opening his mouth. He totally skipped opening it up. My name happens to be George Papadopoulos. A showrunner parked in the C-SPAN van muttered the words Jesus Christ right into his earpiece. I put in work as an overseas policy helper for the Trump campaign back in 2016. I took a guilty plea back in 2017 on a single count of feeding a tall tale to FBI badges regarding the calendar days of a sit-down. I pulled 12 solid days inside a federal lockup. The Department of Justice Inspector General figured out later on that the starting spark for the FBI's probe into my life was the exact same file Senator Schiff talked up on TV for 2.5 straight years. A breather. Senator Schiff claimed on national TV that he totally couldn't have known folks were feeding tall tales to Christopher Steele. I would kindly like to remind the senator that he held top-secret clearance. He held the keys to facts completely locked away from most members of Congress. He picked out exactly what to pull with those keys. A second breather, stretching a bit longer. I pulled 12 solid days inside a federal pen. Senator Schiff hasn't pulled a single day. Papadopoulos grabbed his seat again. The proceeding room sat dead still. Adam Schiff kept staring right down at the desktop. His right hand hadn't budged from his lapel. Over in the wings, Sarah Lynn, the media director who gave up swiping back at minute 26, stood dead still now, staring right at the backside of her boss's skull with the exact look of a gal brought on board 4 years prior to run a Senator's brand who just figured out in real time that the Senator's brand turned into something the senator totally lost the rights to. Senator, Kennedy stated. The drawl practically totally vanished again. It sure wasn't Oxford. It sure wasn't Madisonville. It rang as the pure tone of John Kennedy hitting 73 years of age, a fella who sat through enough proceedings inside enough rooms to figure out precisely the exact amount of tone required for the exact second. You sat right in the top dog's chair of the House Intelligence Committee spanning 4 whole years. You held top-secret clearance. You held the keys to touchy spy facts completely locked away from most members of Congress. You pulled those keys out to read a phony-typed record of a presidential telephone chat right into the official log. You pulled those keys out to talk up a file the FBI already handed its source-walking papers over for feeding tall tales. You brought the whistleblower's housemate on board the very next day right after the telephone chat. You swore to the American folks on TV that you hadn't chatted with the whistleblower while your very own crew did exactly that. You handed in a couple of phony main living spot papers across 2 separate states inside the exact same month spanning a decade. A breather. And you pulled off every bit of this, Senator, while holding a seat inside a room whose whole entire job is acting as the most straight-shooting committee inside the United States Congress. The drawl sucked in a single breath. But that right there ain't what I'm hoping the American folks keep in mind regarding you, Senator. Real estate can get settled up. Tax breaks can get paid right back. Scolding papers get stuffed into dusty boxes that not a single soul bothers to read. All that mess rinses right off. The drawl locked right onto Schiff's gaze. The piece that don't rinse off, Senator, is exactly what you pulled on the 3 fellows who just got to their feet inside this very room. Mr. Page totally lost his whole run. Mr. Nunes got branded an overseas pawn right on the front page of the New York Times, spanning 2 straight years. Mr. Papadopoulos took a trip to a federal pen. 12 solid days inside a federal pen. His missus had to drive herself back home all by her lonesome. They totally blew through their nest egg covering attorney bills. Mr. Page never caught his clearance back. Mr. Nunes walked right out of Congress. Mr. Papadopoulos still can't score a bank loan, all thanks to the federal rap sheet. Flesh and blood, fellas, Senator, flesh and blood lives. Flesh and blood wrecking that you brought down using keys to facts you knew damn well were totally wrong. A twangy breather dropping a bit lower. That right there ain't no rulebook slip, Senator. That right there ain't no theatrical trick. That right there is 3 whole households, and you owe them a whole lot more than just a PR statement. Those eyes locked right onto Schiff one absolute final time. You catching on to exactly why a rural attorney from Louisiana traveled all the way up here this afternoon, Senator? A breather. You catching on to exactly why those 3 fellas just got to their feet? To see? Schiff's right hand let go of the lapel pin. That tiny gold pin, the proper stamp of the United States Senate, shined up that very morning by the exact same hotel worker at the Mayflower who ironed out his suit coat, tipped straight forward right off his lapel. It dangled right off the tiny metal string still hooked onto his pocket. It grabbed the C-SPAN lens light a single time. It didn't find its way back onto his lapel. He didn't bother hoisting his hand up to grab it back. The room completely figured it out. Kennedy didn't bother dragging out another file. He totally ran out of files. He totally didn't need any more to begin with. He stared right at Schiff straight up. The drawl hung around still, but the pace totally shifted. It matched the pace of a fella reading out the final call, not a fella pushing the argument. Senator, I got 3 inquiries I would kindly like a simple yes or no to. The proceeding room sat dead still. Inquiry number 1. Did you, on the 19th day of April 2011, put your name on a Fannie Mae paper swearing a spot in Potomac, Maryland, served as your main living spot while at the exact same moment you were cashing in on a homeowner's tax breakout in California, covering a Burbank condo you swore served as your main living spot as well? A simple yes or no. The initial second ticked by. Schiff dropped his jaw open. It happened to shut. Inquiry number 2. Did you, on the 26th day of September 2019, read straight into the government log a spun-up cut of the Trump-Zelensky telephone chat packing lines and phrases that completely missed showing up inside the genuine unsealed typed record? A simple yes or no. The second, third, and fourth ticked by. Inquiry number 3. Did you, sitting as top dog of the House Intelligence Committee, act as a fellow who pulled on his constitutional spot of deep trust? And I am repeating the scolding paper right here, Senator. That sure ain't my own phrasing. That right there is the United States House of Representatives phrasing to sell a lie to the American folks regarding a presidential telephone chat, a Russia probe, a Steele file, and a whistleblower whose housemate you brought on board the very next day right after the chat? He clasped his hands right down on the desktop. A simple yes or no, Senator. 3 inquiries, 3 answers. You just take your sweet time. The 5th second ticked by. The 6th ticked by. Schiff shot a glance over to his media directors standing in the wings. She was stuck on her cell. She absolutely wasn't looking his way. The 7th second ticked by. The 8th ticked by. He shot a glance over at the witness seats. Carter Page sat staring straight back. Page didn't bat a single eyelash. The 9th second ticked by. The 10th ticked by. His right hand floated over toward the dropped Senate pin, froze up right in the middle, and parked back on the desktop. The 11th ticked by. The 12th ticked by. Schiff shot a glance straight into the media section. That MSNBC reporter who silently mouthed, "That right there is the money quote," 40 whole minutes beforehand was busy scratching inside her notepad right now. She didn't bother raising her eyes up. He shot a glance at the blue lawmakers up on the panel. One sat staring right at the ceiling. One sat staring right at her cell. A couple sat staring right at the desktop sitting right in front of them. Not a single solitary one of them sat staring right at him. He shot a glance over to his media director again. She completely gave up on her cell now. She stood staring straight at him. Her look matched the exact look of a gal who just figured out the PR message she has been typing up totally won't make it through a scrape with the upcoming media spin. The whole setup of these inquiries boils right down to a simple yes or no, Senator. The 13th ticked by. Schiff kept his mouth completely shut. The 14th second ticked right by. Kennedy gave a single nod. He snapped the 4 files shut a single piece at a time. Manila, red, dark blue, pitch black. He stacked them up completely flush right in the middle of the desk. He shoved the whole pile roughly 2 inches dead ahead. Mr. Chairman, I kindly hand over whatever is left of my clock straight to Mr. Page, Mr. Nunes, and Mr. Papadopoulos. They sure been holding out a hell of a lot longer than 5 measly minutes. He leaned right back. The top dog hailing from Iowa, who clearly had a hell of a good time the whole way through, called the break sitting at 30 minutes. Schiff got to his feet. He totally skipped scooping up his papers in a rush. He piled them up once, dropped them back down, piled them up a second time. That Senate pin kept dangling right off his pocket. He didn't bother pinning it back up. He marched straight toward the side entryway. The specific one Senate workers use, not the everyday crowd door. His media director was already glued to her cell. The media section caught a clear look at her typing out a PR message. The opening 3 words of that message, shining clear right on her glass, read exactly this: right wing. Standing at the entryway, Schiff spun around. The lenses spun right along with him. Kennedy stood busy snapping up his carry bag. He totally wasn't looking up. The mic sitting right in front of him still pumped sound. Senator Schiff paused right at the entryway. Madisonville caught every word, too. Schiff never threw a word back. He slipped out and shut the door, trailing behind him with the exact sort of smack a hefty door throws out when not a single soul on either end cares to slam the thing shut. Yet not a single soul cares to ease it shut, neither. The fallout dropped mighty quick. It washed over in 3 distinct waves right by 2 p.m. Eastern Time. 3 pound signs grabbed the top 3 spots across every single American web board. Number Possum Bitback sitting at spot 1. Number 5 Loans 5 Lies sitting at spot 2. Number Madisonville was listening sitting at spot 3. That Carter Page tape, the exact split second he dropped the line, "I am still sitting right here," broke past 38 million clicks prior to the sun dipping down. Adam Schiff's media director pushed out a PR message at exactly 1:14 p.m., 12 straight sentences. The message leaned on the term right-wing 4 whole times, the term smokescreen 3 whole times, and the term spun up twice. It totally skipped bringing up the Maryland paper. It totally skipped bringing up the September 26th speech. It totally skipped bringing up Sean Misko. It totally skipped bringing up Carter Page, Devin Nunes, or George Papadopoulos by their given names. The Federal Housing Finance Agency, pushed for a thought by the Washington Post, pushed out a single-line reply straight from top dog William P. The criminal handoff speaks for its own self. On the Senate Ethics Committee, writing a joined-up, totally shared vote a couple days down the line, kicked off an official deep dive into Senator Schiff's living spot papers. 3 blue lawmakers, looked at as Schiff buddies beforehand, pushed out messages that, if you read them mighty close, completely skipped throwing him a life vest. An old-school federal prosecutor sitting on CNN that very afternoon dropped the exact line that was fixing to get looped and looped for the upcoming 48 hours. In any totally normal setup, that Maryland-California mix-up would have sparked a wire hustle charge straight out the gate. The singular piece shielding Senator Schiff right now happens to be the United States Senate. John Kennedy turned down every single media sit-down poke. By the time the sun dipped down, folks counted 843 of them. He walked right out of the Senate Hart Building using a side door at exactly 1:26 p.m. He drove his own self straight over to Reagan National Airport. He hopped onto a Delta bird flying straight to Louis Armstrong New Orleans International. The bird touched dirt exactly at 9:40 p.m. He snagged a rental ride. He drove roughly an hour and 7 minutes straight north right up Highway 22. He hooked a turn onto a dirt patch road parked in Zachary, Louisiana. He rolled right into the gravel patch belonging to a tiny timber shack. The painted-by-hand board hung over the entryway stated, "Beauregard's Bait and Tackle." Danny? Beauregard sat out on the front deck planted in an iron folding seat, nursing a jar of sweet tea right on the banister, hitting 83 years of age, sporting the exact same blue jean button-up he wore since way back on Tuesday. Hell of a haul, Johnny. Hell of a haul, Uncle Beau. Beauregard slid him over a jar of tea. He skipped asking a lick about the proceeding. He totally didn't need to. The TV set sitting inside the bait shack was buzzing away. It stayed buzzing away the whole entire day. That guy hailing from California, Beauregard stated. He ever drop a single line regarding that backup house? No, sir. That spells out a little something right there, don't it? Yes, sir. Beauregard tipped his seat back a single time. Your pop used to drop a little line regarding possums. Yes, sir, he sure did. Stated a possum is going to let a fella sell him totally short for exactly as long as it takes the fella to sell his own self short. Yes, sir. Well, you sure let him sell his own self short, Johnny. Kennedy took a swallow of that tea. Beauregard kept his mouth completely shut for a good stretch after that. The Chifuncte River kept on rolling roughly a half-mile heading south. It kept on rolling mighty slow in the pitch black, exactly the way it rolled since way before folks ever dreamed up a Congress, a House Intelligence Committee, a Senate Heart Building, a steel file, or a fella out of Burbank going by the name Adam Schiff. That rural attorney out of Madisonville sure reminded Washington about a little piece of truth a Senate proceeding room kept on forgetting for a mighty long stretch. That Harvard twang sure ain't no fix for a printed-out paper trail. The Constitution sure ain't no Halloween getup. And down in Louisiana, sitting inside a bait shack parked on the Chifuncte River, folks been keeping a solid hold on the receipts since way before the Senate ever dreamed up committees. Beauregard polished off his tea. He set the empty jar right down on the banister. You sticking around for the morning meal, Johnny? Yes, sir. Solid. Your aunt is whipping up a batch of biscuits. If you stuck around this deep, you just caught the morning a rural attorney hailing from Madisonville, Louisiana, a guy who pulled 17 years acting as state treasurer, packs a JD pulled from the University of Virginia and grabbed a postgrad diploma over at Magdalen College, Oxford, schooled a Harvard law grad hailing from Burbank, California, on exactly what genuine proof looks like. He relied on 4 files. He relied on the pure truth. He relied on his pop's bait shack smarts. Wreck that thumbs up button if you still figure a printed paper trail whips a PR statement any day of the week. Hit subscribe on this channel because we got a whole lot more coming down the pipe exactly like this. Drop a comment saying possum bit back if you figure a Louisiana possum just completely wrecked the main lawyer behind the tossing out of Donald Trump right on his very own stomping grounds. Pass this along to the hard-working Americans sitting in your circle, the very one who burned 5 straight years holding out for somebody to toss Adam Schiff these very questions right on live TV. Lord bless our old soldiers. Lord bless Carter Page, Devin Nunes, and George Papadopoulos. And Lord bless the rural attorney hailing from Madisonville who still figures that a signed sworn paper, a Senate proceeding, and a jar of sweet tea can pull off exactly what the cable news folks kept failing to pull off for 10 straight years. Tell the pure truth. Whenever the lenses power down and the suit and ties stroll on out, the printed paper trail sticks right around stamped in solid black and white. But if a sitting lawmaker can stare down a giant pile of his very own checked-out proof and just casually stroll out the rear exit without a single ounce of payback, exactly who is holding the genuine cards up in Washington? The suit and ties drafting up the laws, or the everyday folks who don't ever forget?